And as the war rages on in Ukraine, India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, is heading to Russia for a bilateral visit. He will be holding talks with his Russian counterpart and the Russian Trade Minister as well on Tuesday. This meeting comes days before the G20 summit in Bali, where Putin will be in the same room with Western leaders, including US President Joe Biden, for the first time since the war broke out. But there is another reason why S. Jaishankar's trip is being regarded as a crucial one. India is being billed as a potential negotiator between Russia and Ukraine. S. Jaishankar's visit is expected to finalize the cooperation between India and Russia under multilateral frameworks, including the G20, SCO and BRICS. But all eyes are on the possibility of the US accepting India as a mediator between the two sides at war. Reports say India has intervened between Ukraine and Russia quietly whenever there has been a deadlock. In July, India had weighed in with Russia on the grain shipment from ports in the Black Sea. A lot of these messages have been delivered confidentially, as Delhi is known to have positioned itself with credibility on both sides. Meanwhile, reports say that the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi offered assistance on the peace talks during a call with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky, however, said that Ukraine would not be conducting any negotiations with Putin, but is committed to peaceful settlement through dialogue. But as the winter approaches in the conflict zone, there is a sense that both sides would want a ceasefire before early next year, and many view this as a potential opportunity for India to be a broker between the two sides. India is dependent on Russia for its defense supplies. This is the most important pillar of the relationship between the two countries. But for the first time in the last 3 winters, Russian military supply lines are under strain due to the ongoing war. And this comes at a time when Indian and Chinese troops are locked in a border standoff in eastern Ladakh. Another important element is the energy relationship. Russia has reportedly become India's largest supplier of crude oil in October, as refiners stepped up the purchase of discounted seaborne oil. And this has not gone down well with Ukraine as well as the Western partners. S. Jaishankar's visit is expected to look at these aspects as well. What is also significant here is that the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to visit Russia this year. And if that happens next month, S. Jaishankar will be there to lay the groundwork. For more on this, with us on the broadcast is Harsh V Pant, the head of ORF Strategic Studies Programme from Delhi. Thanks very much for being here. Let me ask you first for your assessment of how significant this visit will be for India given the current circumstances.
Well, it's a significant visit for a number of reasons, and perhaps most significantly because India will be taking up the presidency of the G20, also the presidency of the SCO, and of course, there is a Indian Prime Minister's visit to Russia in the pipeline. So I think for all those reasons, it becomes imperative for the Foreign Minister of India to lay the groundwork, to prepare, for these visits and for these summits, and to ensure that India and Russian interests converge and they are pushed forward in a direction that is positive. Now, India has been, as you know, the focal point of attention for the West and for Russia itself. We have seen Mr. Putin himself talking about India a lot in recent weeks. So India is one of the few countries that can credibly talk to multiple stakeholders in this confrontation in Ukraine. So I think bilaterally, globally, this visit will be an important benchmark for India-Russia relations, and hopefully the Indian Foreign Minister will be able to make India's points clear to Russians, because India is increasingly concerned about the scale and scope of the conflict in Ukraine as well.
Also, when it comes to India's role as a potential negotiator between Russia and Ukraine as far as this war is concerned, what is your view on that?
Well, certainly, India remains one of the few countries that can talk to Ukrainians, to the Russians, and to its Western partners in a way that perhaps no other country can. And so it puts India in a pivotal position. It puts India in a position where all of these stakeholders are willing to listen to Indian concerns, are willing to listen to what India has to offer. The question is whether Ukraine and Russia are militarily prepared for a political settlement. India's position has been very clear that this is not the time for war, and increasingly the only way you can resolve this conflict is by coming to some kind of a political settlement. But what we are hearing now increasingly is that one of the other side is reluctant to come to that conclusion. And unless that happens, I think a lot of the debate about India's role will be hypothetical. But once the two sides are willing to, and able to talk, I think India should be in a position to galvanize those conversations.
Right. Let's also talk about how this will be a significant boost for the India-Russia partnership and how this visit will be taking that relationship forward as well, especially the energy partnership as well.
Indeed, I think what has happened interestingly in the last few months is that the energy aspect of the relationship has grown for obvious reasons. And India has been trying to get discounted oil from Russia because of its own domestic political economic challenges. And so in some ways, India and Russia have started looking beyond defense. Now, defense is certainly an important parameter. Defense is certainly an important area where the two sides continue to work together. But I think what this conflict has revealed are the vulnerabilities of India relying on one defense partner, and especially when Russian defense supplies are under strain because of the conflict that it is engaged in. So therefore, the economic ties become important, energy ties become important, and I think that will be a very important part of the conversation going forward. And this visit certainly will lay the foundations for that aspect of the relationship.
Right, Harsh V Pant, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for being here. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.